Hi, this is Mike with episode 54 of Getting Everyone Moving, brought to you by Palms to Pines Parasports. Today we have a special guest, David Evjen, who is the head coach at wheelchair basketball, men's, at Eastern Washington University. Hey, David.
How's it going, Michael? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Tell us how you got involved in the world of adoptive sports.
Ooh, I'll try to keep it short and sweet. But
Okay.
what happened was I grew up in a small town in Minnesota and decided to attend Southwest Minnesota State University in Marshall, Minnesota. I had just came off a herniated disc in my lower back my senior year. So coming in freshman year, my back was still recovering. You could definitely tell in my walk that something, wasn't quite right with my body. Whatever it was, you just couldn't tell. You could just tell that something was off. And walking around the hallways, and some of the wheelchair basketball athletes saw me, and one of them ended up approaching me at an open gym, probably like 7 o'clock at night, whatever night it was, probably like a Thursday or something like that, and said, hey, I noticed you have a unique walk. That's how I described it. You have a unique walk. I was wondering is something wrong? Do you hurt? And I just kind of explained, I have a herniated disc. I'm still rehabbing and everything. So he said, well, we have a wheelchair basketball team on campus. And I was like, I do. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew that was a sport that the campus offered. And he said, yeah, I don't know if you're interested, you could probably qualify to play. And I was like, really? And he explained the process of, functional disability versus medical, and talked me into it because that year everybody went to nationals, and that year nationals happened to be at the University of Alabama, and it was the week before our spring break. So essentially I could get 2 weeks off. 2 weeks off of school as long as I finished my finals up and did everything, ahead of time. And I said, I'll try it out, and in my head, I said, it is an opportunity. I was kind of bummed out. I wasn't going to be able to play collegiately in able-bodied sports. So this would have gave me a chance. And if I ended up not liking it or not being good or whatever the case was, I can at least be a manager because I'd still be involved in basketball. That was October of 2012. And needless to say, I got my butt whooped for like a good year. Solid year. First 3 months, didn't know what I was doing in a chair. I knew how to play basketball. That was one thing they could tell. I knew how to pass. I knew how to shoot. I knew kind of the overall flow of the game. It was just moving at that pace in a wheelchair was super new to me. So I hopped on the team, got my butt whooped, like I said, and that sparked the competitiveness inside me. And once we got to some collegiate games, our first game was against the University of Illinois women. And when I couldn't get off a back pick and I couldn't make it down the court to offense and defense that whole game, I said, I got to figure this thing out. And, it was an eye opener. It was an eye opener for sure, just to get into a new world of athletics, but also understanding that, I came into it with such a naive outlook of like, oh, this person is more disabled than most in this game. So I should be able to take them. Not really the case, because the adaptability was not there yet for me. So then it was more just like, oh, okay, this is competitive. It doesn't matter who's in front of me. I have to play my best and give it all, because they are giving me an opportunity. They're doing me a favor to letting me get on the team and figure it out. It's not the other way around. It's not like I am stepping on their toes, so to speak, getting in the chair, because they're looking at me like, oh, this is fresh meat. Okay, we can go ahead and, take advantage of it. So it was awesome. And that, sparked the interest. I played 5 years at SMSU, ended up graduating with my bachelor's in 2016, and then stuck around, played my 5th year in 2017, and finished with my master's in 2018 as a graduate assistant. And I just keep telling them, in 2 years during that time, it was 2015 and 2016, I went and I got on the Colombian national team, and played two summers. I went down there and played in 2 tournaments, the South American Cup and the America's Cup, which, I mean, thankfully for me, they were both hosted in Colombia. That's where I was born. I have dual citizenship there. So it was a great time. I got to go back, experience my culture. I was adopted at a young age, so experiencing my culture was awesome. Get to play basketball at the same time. So I say to everybody, if it wasn't for wheelchair basketball, the opportunities it gave me, I don't know where I would be, and I just want to, pay it forward. So that's how I got into it, just walking goofy in the hallway. That's it. That set it all up for me.
So but now you're a head coach at a university who has just started, a program. How did that happen?
So when I graduated in 2018 with my master's degree, it was in coaching. My bachelor's is in communication. I liked communication studies, and I just didn't focus on anything within that major. And then when I had the chance to be a graduate student, I picked coaching right away because I kind of knew at that point, I actually had a daughter. So at that point, I knew my life was going to kind of switch gears and have to switch gears into not necessarily following my playing dreams, probably so to speak, but more transitioning into how can I, support my family or help support my family, because my fiance at the time was also doing her thing, getting her degree. And so right out of school, she won. She got the job in her field first, right out of school. She was a social work major and was licensed. And so we moved an hour away from where we went to school in Marshall. That's where we met. And she got a job in social work, and I was still kind of looking in coaching, but a job came up at a high school to be a Spanish cultural liaison, pretty much an interpreter. And so I was able to do that. So I was working that job and was there for a year, and coming into my second year, I just, throughout that time, I was looking for post coaching jobs, just trying to see, where I could get my foot in. And Eastern Washington, that post was up, and actually a former opponent of mine, someone who I played against for all 5 years of my career at University of Illinois, he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, I know your master's is in coaching," which could tell you how close knit the community is as a whole. Like, even though we were opponents, we're always looking out for each other, and we know what each other is studying and what we like to do. And he said, "Hey, you should apply for this, man. Like, I know your master's is in coaching. I don't know what you're doing right now, but you should apply." And I said, "Yeah, I'll definitely give it a shot." So I went ahead and applied, and interview process and everything like that. And when they offered me the job, I had a conversation with my wife, who had a good job at the time in child protection and social work. And she said, "Well, this is kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity, and you waited and you kept, waiting and putting your name out there. If they offer you the job, then, you got to kind of take it, see what you can do with it." So she was supportive from the very beginning. And I ended up accepting the job, and I moved out here by myself to kind of get established. And then COVID happened. And so I had to move from Spokane back to Minnesota, and pretty much, I want to say start, but it was going to be just quarantine with my family in Minnesota over the summer. And then in August of this past year of 2020, all three of us, my daughter and my wife and I, ended up moving out to Spokane for good. And finally, solidifying our life out here on the West Coast, inland Northwest, West Coast, whatever you want to get technical about. Just a new beginning.
Has your wife been able to find a job then?
Yeah. So she, child protection, I don't know if anybody ever has been around someone that works child protection, you just have to have thick skin. It's very grinding, and it takes a lot out of you. And so when she had the opportunity, she had served her 2 years, and that's kind of what the consensus is. Everybody lets you know, like, hey, after 2 years of child protection, self-care is a must. Yeah. And, the burnout rate is about 2 years, and you start looking for something else. And it was true for her. So she had done her 2 years. I had this job. We were quarantining. We were looking to move out to Washington. She was like, "I'm done. I'm good. I did my time in child protection. I need something that's going to be a little bit more effective for my mental health." And so she found a job at Volunteers of America, and is a independent living counselor.
That's
for,
great.
yeah, for at-risk, homeless and at-risk teenagers and young adults. So she works with clients that are probably about 15 years old up to 21, and just helping them, adjust to life on their own, making, smart decisions, and just trying to give them a better opportunity than what they're in right now. And what she loves about it is just that it's it's like a voluntary step for the clients. They are coming to her. It's not them getting sent to her like child protection. And, it's very much more, it's less dependent on her and more dependent on them to be able to really help with their processes and get their life in a better track. So she loves it. She loves it, and she's very thankful for it.
So you both work in the field of really giving back. I mean, for you, look, there aren't that many colleges offering, wheelchair basketball or other adaptive sports at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why Eastern Washington? Why not University of Washington?
Well, I think out here, like in Spokane, it's crazy. The person and the organization, the nonprofit that really sparked the idea to pretty much all three of the major universities over here in Eastern Washington University being one, Gonzaga being another one, and then Washington State being in Pullman, which is an hour and a half south of Spokane, was Parasport Spokane. CEO is Teresa Skinner. Her idea sparked this whole movement. And, she just kept seeing that Parasport Spokane, they really have a great developmental process for adaptive athletes in any sport, but their main sports are track and field and basketball. And some of the athletes, if they're doing track and field, obviously, as most of whoever's watching this interview probably will know, or maybe not, is that you're really wheelchair track, wheelchair racing and ambulatory track, wheelchair racing especially. If you're really good at that, there's a very small amount of colleges that can offer you an education and a chance to, participate on a team. And a lot of her athletes were going to Illinois, the University of Illinois, but not all of them that might have qualified athletically, or were just a little apprehensive of leaving their families going so far away. And then another reason was she still had some athletes that were more focused on basketball than track. And so she's like, I mean, if they go somewhere, that's even farther that they could go. There's more opportunities, but it's even farther away from home. And she's like, we have so many athletes out here, especially in Spokane, but in Seattle area and Portland and even California, they're just waiting for an opportunity to get seen, and they don't get seen by colleges unless they make the national tournament in basketball. And if they don't do well in their conference play, they don't get invited to nationals. So they have a lot of athletes that are just kind of sitting out there and not getting looked at, and they might qualify academically to go to school and play ball. They might be athletically very good, but they're just not getting the looks. So she sparked the movement. Eastern Washington, my boss, Donna Mann, who is the dean for the College of Health Science and Public Health, she saw it as a great opportunity to not only show that her college through the university is not only giving opportunities for academic prowess, graduate degrees in the health and science field, but also really using that as a tool to help adaptive athletes, come and get a degree and play ball. It was like a match made in heaven pretty much, because you're still focusing on the mission of the university and especially the college in promoting health and wellness. And then also you're giving these student athletes a chance to not only go to school close to home, but also be able to compete at a high level, which all they wanted to do is compete at a high level. And it just makes it easier because you're closer to home. We're kind of in no man's land, which is good and bad, where we're situated. And really, that idea got posed, like I said, from Teresa to Gonzaga and Washington State. Washington State University, they have chairs, wheelchair basketball. They have basketball chairs, and they do a little bit of club work, I think. I'm not exactly sure. But Eastern Washington was the one, and Donna Mann, my boss, was the one that really hopped on it and said, What, there's a huge opportunity out here. What are we doing? You know, why have we waited this long? So that's really what it was. It was just, you know, it started from the ground roots organization of Parasports Spokane. You know, if it wasn't for them, the idea never would have probably got proposed to Eastern Washington or any of the universities. So I just, you know, huge gratitude towards Teresa and her husband, David, for really establishing a great program of independence and competition, you know, from the prep age all the way up.
Now, why? So again, going back to this question of there aren't that many, you know, collegiate programs. In California, we don't have a collegiate wheelchair basketball team yet. I mean, I know part of it, I mean, maybe a large part of it is money, resources. But why do you think that there aren't more programs? And then how do you think we can get more programs?
Well, I think, yeah, you know, you just said it. Money, you know, adaptive athletics is, you know, no matter what the sport is, well, not necessarily. A couple of the sports you could do with very little money and very little equipment, but a lot of them, you know, if you think about wheelchair racing or wheelchair basketball, they are expensive sports to get started just because of the equipment needed. So I think that can be apprehensive for some, you know, programs and universities to be like, that's a lot of money, you know, for something that we don't know much about. But then that's the issue, is they don't know that much about it. There's still a stigma of adaptive athletics being not competitive or only for recreational use, which it can be. I'm not saying it can't be, but that's the only thing, that's the only type of outlet I think a lot of people think of that's out there. So, you know, there's still that awareness issue in trying to get people to come to a game and see, you know, how competitive, how athletic these student athletes are. Like, I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, you see them in the hallway. Okay, they have a disability. They're in a day chair, or maybe they're not in a day chair. They have a funny walk. You know, whatever the case is, or they're an amputee, and you see them for that, and they're like, oh, you know, good job. You know, great job for you living life and, you know, doing everything that you can to live your life to the fullest. Which, okay, sure, you know, big props to them. But that's not really what, you know, they're just living life. They're trying to do the same thing we're all trying to do. Then you see them in a chair and you see what they can do. And that's where you really make the connection of being like, oh, okay, this is something that is just as competitive as any able-bodied sport or able-bodied team that I can go watch a game. And so I think the awareness and trying to get people to not only say, you know, that's the hardest part, is explaining to people that this is what we're trying to do, and they understand that and they want to help, but it's not until they actually see the game or meet the athletes.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part, is like, okay, but I need you to make a little bit of time because this is new. You know, people don't like new things right off the rip because they're so busy and caught up in what they're already doing. You know, I've had a boss tell me before, like when I brought up something, hold on, like, I'm just not ready for anything new right now.
Right.
And, you know, I've had that happen, and I'm like, okay, maybe not in this set, but, you know, it's just that trust of being like, this looks like a lot on paper, but if you get started, this could turn into something bigger than you have ever imagined. And I think probably what the biggest thing is for me is like, you have to get out and you have to demonstrate what the sport is. You can't just talk about it. It's, you know, everybody knows about volleyball, football, basketball, baseball. They've seen it before. Yeah. They haven't seen wheelchair basketball. They haven't seen, you know, ambulatory track or wheelchair racing or sled hockey, or even wheelchair tennis, because wheelchair tennis, that, I mean, I haven't played it yet, but that, watching it, that looks super fun. Or lacrosse.
Yeah.
And so trying to talk them into getting a demonstration game on your high school campus or at a park or, you know, at your local YMCA or something like that, that is where the push needs to happen. But like you said, it's the money issue, you know, so that's why a lot of adaptive athletic programs, they live off of grants. You know, we did for our first year. You know, we still look for grants all the time because that awareness is not there yet. And to be honest, like when I first got into the sport, I was like, Minnesota has a team, actually multiple teams, if you think about the clubs and
Yeah.
and then the university team. But California doesn't have a team, and they're a huge state. You know, you think about that, like, just because you have a big population doesn't mean that the awareness is really necessarily there.
Yeah.
And again, it really just it takes that one person to really believe in the process, you know, and believe in the athletes and understand what the athletes are trying to say. Like, we're not looking for a handout. We're looking for one shot to show you what we can do. And we're kind of promising that if you watch us do what we do, you're kind of going to like it. You're going to like it a little bit, and you're going to want to see more of it, you know, and just talking somebody into being able to watch them be just as athletic in their own way as any able-bodied counterpart. So
do you on your team, so do you have men and women?
Yeah, so we're a co-ed team as of right now, you know, so slowly as we build, we hope to have, you know, a men's and women's team. That's always the goal, just to, you know, foster more growth and get more, you know, students on campus. But right now, being a co-ed team, to be honest, it really is an advantage. I will say we only have one female on the team right now. I'm hopefully going to be starting recruiting, you know, as tournaments kind of pop up. I'm hoping to get to them, but you just never know right now. Things are opening up places, but as far as recruiting, I'm really relying, and I think a lot of coaches they're relying on whatever communications they've had with athletes from last year when they were able to go to tournaments and just kind of maintain them. So anybody new, you might have something on your radar. You might be talking to a juniors coach who is like kind of feeding you different names of players, but you can't see them play right now. So it's tough. But yeah, I hope to have, as we keep growing, before we end up being, you know, having a solid budget to be able to open up another team, a women's team, excuse me. I would love to have as many girls as we can on the team, because not only is it a strategic help, but also it helps the guys a lot. Let's be honest. Men, and especially guys that are coming into college in those years, they can be pretty immature. And so having a woman on the team, or having a girl on the team, can kind of make them see things in a different light. Realize, you know, kind of the communication piece, how to talk to your teammates. You can't talk to all your teammates the same way. They don't respond to that. You know, listening when someone else has an opinion. You know, sometimes guys just get into this role of, well, he's the captain, so I just need to listen to him, good, bad, right, or wrong. And sometimes I think girls just have that. I don't know if it's an innate ability or if it's just the gender roles, where it's like, no, he's a little bit wrong in this instance. You know, let's all hold everybody accountable, you know, and just growing as a team, you can just really help each other out as you you know, get better on the court, and you foster those relationships between the two. It just helps a lot socially, I think.
Yeah. So, you know, I spent a season with the University of Arizona women's wheelchair basketball team. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that school, well, Tucson, a lot happening. The school is very accessible. Mm-hmm. Is that the same for Eastern Washington? And do you think, you know, having wheelchair basketball at the collegiate level is helping to make people at the university much more sensitive to accessibility and inclusion issues?
Oh, yeah. Most definitely. Eastern Washington, I mean, we're out here. If anybody knows the geography of Eastern Washington, it's hilly, it's a little bit mountainous. Where we are in Cheney, it's a lot of rolling hills. You get close to the Palouse rolling hills out here. And then you go into Spokane and you're in a valley, and you go 30 minutes west from Spokane, you're in the mountains of Idaho. So as far as the terrain, it's not super, you know, wheelchair friendly. But in Cheney, it's more so just because it's hilly. It's not mountainous. You don't have ridges or anything like that. But especially on campus, people do forget, unless you see it. I mean, and that's with everything in life. Unless you are exposed to something, you don't really pay attention to it. Yeah. So as we get more athletes on campus and they see us doing, you know, a recruiting visit with families, or the athletes getting to and from classes, or getting to and from practice, then I had, you know, I could have conversations with the grounds crew. And it's like, hey, yeah, you moved the snow off the road, but you put it right into the curb cut. that's not really going to help us out very much. You know, you put it
Right.
right in front of a door, right in front of a doorway. You got it off the sidewalk. You know, that was good. That was a start. But that doorway,
Yeah.
even if we hit the handicap button, you know, sometimes the door's not going to open because there's so much snow in front. So you know, we're getting better. I'm not going to lie to anybody and say we're the most successful campus in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm also not going to say that we're the most, you know, updated as far as facilities go. But I think what we're doing right now is doing our part to help facilitate that growth, even on the campus level. Because like I said, the more you're exposed to it, the more you're sensitive, the more sensitive you are to it, and the more you understand and appreciate what they are really going through. You don't have to give them a whole handout. You don't have to push them up a hill. They can get up a hill just fine. And they'll probably yell at you if you try to push them, because they're like, dude, you're making it harder for me, you know? But what you do is you just give it a little bit more thought into what you're doing as far as cleaning off the snow. And, you know, the weather is another thing too, that this is Eastern Washington, just like Minnesota, just like Whitewater, Wisconsin, just like Illinois, you have to deal with it. It just is what it is. And us being new, we are getting better in those conversations. You're getting a lot more groundbreaking, I would say, out here.
That's great. You didn't mention Edinburgh. That's cool.
Oh, Edinburgh too. Yep, Edinburgh too.
Over there, right?
Yep. Omaha. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. So the sport is growing. The sport is growing.
Right.
What do you? So over the next year, assuming it's the end of COVID, I mean, what do you hope to accomplish with your team?
Number one, I want to keep our GPA as high as we can. Only having 5 players, as far as team GPA goes, it's tough because, you know, as you know, when you play basketball, field goal percentage, the more players you have shooting helps your field goal percentage, because if somebody's having an off night, a couple more people can, you know, kind of make up for that difference. Same thing with free throws. We have a goal on our team to shoot 70% as a team from the free throw line every day in practice, games. So when you only have 5 players, everybody has to be at their best. Same thing goes with GPAs. So if we have a team GPA goal, which we did of a 3.0, all 5 athletes, all 5 students have to, you know, really work hard to maintain that 3.0 average. If someone drops off, you know, that can really big point, just math, right? Math heads, they understand averages and everything like that. So as we grow, I just really want to keep that. We actually ended up with a GPA this last quarter of a 3.0, and we go by quarters. So we go fall, winter, spring, and summer. Summer is optional for all the students. So fall quarter, we had a team GPA of a 3.4, and that was amazing. This quarter, we had a team GPA of 3.0, you know, so and that's with 5 players. So I want to keep that growing as we add more freshmen to the team. I want that to keep on growing, just because if you have a culture of good academics, that means at the very least, that means that people can buckle down and get stuff done, even if they don't want to, because academics can be tough, you know, and unless you have a class that you are really interested in what you're learning, right? Especially when you get in as a freshman, those general classes, you're taking classes that you're like, I did this in high school, but this is a little harder, so that's why I have to take it. You know, those gen eds are tough. And so if we can just get that freshman and kind of like get them on a fast track to being like, hey, this is what we're doing. And to be honest, the captains that we have on the team right now, they really help facilitate that. They have their own rules within study sessions. You know, we have team mandatory study sessions. The captains hold everybody else accountable and themselves accountable, you know, double time. You know, coach says this, we're going to be a little bit harder, because we definitely know, like, if you fall off, it's tough.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's the number one thing that I want to keep, is just the good academic side. And then number 2, I just want us to be able to get to more tournaments. We need to, as a new program, we just need to see action. Even if we're getting our butts whooped, as long as we grow, you know, in the little things, as we continue to see more competition, that's where it's going to be. You know, we played Auburn down in Alabama. I played Auburn when I was playing at SMSU. The Auburn team that we played against as that I saw as a coach is 5 to 6 times better than the Auburn team that I played as an athlete.
Sure.
Because they were new and they had time and they've grown, and people, you know, they really need to realize that it is a process. You know, I think when I was playing, I mean, that's probably 6 years. They've been a team for 6 years, you know, and it took that long, as it should. You know, it's not going to be a quick turnaround for anything. You know, you have to have good athletes, and then you have to have people that actually understand what they signed up for. So that's why I try not to let anybody, I'm not about to promise you, you know, a full ride scholarship. We still are working on that pool of money. So I can't give you a full ride scholarship to come play. I'm not giving you a bunch of playing time just because we need numbers, you know. And that's the one thing I kept telling everybody when I was recruiting them. Look, do we need, you know, 5 players? Yeah, we need at least 5 players. I only want 5 players that understand what they're signing up for. This is a new team. It's going to be tough. You're going to have to fight academically. We're going to have to lean on financial aid a little bit right now. And that just is the name of the game. And the 5 athletes that we got, they understood that. So when you have that and they have that understanding with each other, then when it comes down to actually practicing and stuff, they understand that every little thing that we get better is just a little bit of growth. They, you know, big picture versus little picture type of messages that we're sending to them. And I keep it real. I just really try to keep it as honest as I can. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. If you come to Eastern, you know what you're signing up for. It's not going to be the prettiest way. It's not going to be the easiest way. But if you really trust this process, you could be a part of history. And that's building a program from the very ground up. Right. And that's how all these programs started. And look at them now, you know, Arizona, even SMSU. Like SMSU since I left has grown. You know, that Derek Klickner has done a great job, and just the overall awareness and getting the university back behind that team that we didn't have when I first got on the squad back in 2012. And so I think the league is starting to even out, and I'm really excited for us to be one of those teams that's starting to help that evening process, where it's going to be, you know, you have your top 3, and it used to be, you know, the top 3 were the top 3. And now as we add more players or add more programs, that's going to kind of start narrowing out and averaging out, where it's going to be, look, every game is going to be high competition because these kids are ready and they know that there's more opportunities and more schools to choose from. The recruiting process is going to be a little different. The athletes' decisions of where they're going to go to school, they have a lot more options. It's not just, you know, the 1 or 2 that are like, if I really want to go somewhere and play, I go to these 2 schools. If I really want to go possibly have more success right away, I'll go to these schools. There's going to be a lot more decisions happening for them. So, I mean, I'm just excited as we go in. I hope we can get to more tournaments. We'll have to fly everywhere. So that's, you know, great bonding time sitting at the airports, you know, and that just is what it is. And hopefully as we gain more success, recruiting competition aside, I hope that more teams start popping up over here in the West Side. You know, the head coach Michael Beardsley from Arizona and I were talking. He said, he's like, man, we just need a team in like Reno or like Las Vegas, like somewhere in between us. Yeah, that would help. So, you know, that would help so much. Or, you know, California, Oregon. Yeah. You know, and we're kind of in Eastern Washington. You're kind of close to, you know, states that don't have a huge population. Montana, Idaho. Well, Southern Idaho, they're pretty good, but Northern Idaho, not a whole lot of population. Wyoming, so that's a little tough too. So, you know, just hopefully we're just going to help facilitate the growth of the sport by getting their name out there and at least showing up to tournaments so that they can be like, oh, okay, I've never seen that logo before. Where are they from? Like Eastern Washington. Oh, okay, and that's where it really gets started. You know, the awareness piece of it.
Yeah. So we're coming towards the end of our interview. What are some final words that you'd or message that you'd like to leave our listening audience with?
Well, I think number one, I think the more people that are, you know, watching these interviews and are gaining any kind of knowledge, if you can pass that knowledge on, if you already know everything that I'm talking about, cool. Just keep on doing what you're doing and passing on that knowledge. you know, to any and everybody that is willing to listen. But if you're on here and you're learning a little bit, bits and pieces about, you know, what adaptive athletics is, how it works, you know, kind of the pros and cons of, you know, getting into adaptive athletics, what those are, just pass those along. And the more that the conversation can, if that conversation can happen in more areas and more demographics of people, the better that the overall awareness is going to be. And then pretty soon we'll see, hopefully, you know, maybe the NCAA takes over wheelchair basketball and adaptive track and field, you know, and they take it over. And now you have more of a solidified budget. You have more solidified awareness, access to more, you know, media outlets and things like that. We just want to really make sure that we're giving these student athletes and these programs a chance to show what they're worth, you know, what they really do, you know, change the stereotype, change the stigma of adaptive athletics for the better. And so I just appreciate anybody that's going to end up watching this. I apologize for the, you know, for the beanie. I came outside and had to come in. It was a little cold over in Spokane just today, but you know, I'm sorry for the unprofessional attire. But if you're watching and listening, just, you know, keep on pushing the message forward, and you know, really appreciate any support that we can get, because this sport, personally, this sport has given me so many opportunities that I never thought. I didn't even think that not that they were possible. I just didn't even know that they even existed.
Yeah.
And so if I can push that and give back in that way and help someone just like myself who was either naive or just, you know, kind of zoned out of the process and just not able to get that kind of outlet, if I can help somebody in that way, I mean, that's a win in my book, because, you know, we can all build off of each other's successes. Even though we're competitive on the court or on the track, or even on the ice if you're doing sled hockey or the court for tennis, you know, we're competitive when we get into that atmosphere. But as a culture, we just want to grow and make sure that competitiveness stays high, and that we help everybody, you know, reach whatever success that they are looking for.
Right. David, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate the opportunity.